Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you come to these videos as a gentle way to unwind before drifting off to sleep. So, before you close your eyes tonight, could I ask you for one small favor? Just leave me a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or maybe share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Little actions like that help YouTube recognize the content and spread it to more people who might enjoy it. My current goal is to reach around 300 likes within the first 24 hours. Now then, let's step into tonight's chilling stories together. My name is Adam, 30 years old, living in a quiet small town in Ohio. I worked as an amateur private investigator, mostly taking on small jobs from online forums. I needed the money, and that was the only reason I agreed to a job from a man named Dale last October. He wanted me to find his younger sister Annie, who had gone missing 12 years earlier. I met Dale at a roadside cafe. The moment I saw him, he gave off an uncomfortable, physically unclean impression. He had thick, messy black hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in days, a wrinkled old sweatshirt with a brown stain on the chest, and a heavy body odor so strong that I had to take shallow breaths just to stay focused. Dale told me he was a final year medical student and was taking care of sick family members. But the trembling in his voice, the dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep, and the foul smell on his breath made me doubt every word. I saw someone who was desperate, obsessed, and completely lost. He handed me an old, blurry photograph of a little girl, about 2 or 3 years old. She was staring straight into the camera with big, innocent eyes, and he said that was Annie. Everything felt suspicious, a huge disconnect between the story he was telling and the man standing in front of me. But I looked at the thick envelope he gave me, a deposit worth 2 months' rent, and told myself, this is just another hopeless missing person case. It would lead nowhere, but I'd still get paid. I took the deposit and began the job. 10 days later, my skepticism turned into horror. I moved to the neighborhood where Dale lived, hoping to find more clues about his family's past. There, I met Mr. Walker, a recently moved-in neighbor. He was a polite, middle-aged man who seemed very familiar with the area. While talking, I mentioned Dale. Walker froze, frowned, then slowly told me things that stunned me. Dale's parents died 12 years ago in a car accident. Dale was not a medical student. He was studying welding at a technical school. And most importantly, he's severely traumatized, and I don't recall him ever having a younger sister. Walker told the story calmly and confidently, completely shaking the foundation of everything Dale had told me. I decided to investigate Dale more closely. I checked his technical school. A classmate told me that Dale often brought 3 large dolls to class. He treated them like children, and one of them he called Annie. I was shocked, but arrived at a comforting conclusion. Dale had suffered severe psychological trauma after his parents' death and some kind of personal loss, which led him to develop delusions and create a doll family to cope. I thought, at least he isn't a criminal. I'm just taking money from a broken man. That eased my nerves somewhat. During a progress call with Dale, I casually dropped some small talk to justify my lack of progress. Looks like someone new just moved into your area, I said. I saw some moving trucks not long ago. Probably a young family with a little girl or something. It was a harmless throwaway comment. But for someone like Dale, that sentence lit a dangerous spark. I didn't know I had just unknowingly handed him a target right next door. That night, around 11 p.m., I heard a loud scream coming from Walker's house. I ran outside and saw police pinning Dale to the ground. He had been caught trying to pull Walker's daughter, a little girl named Mandy, into his old car. Dale, being restrained by two officers, was still screaming in desperation, calling the girl Annie. In that moment, a chill ran down my spine. I realized my careless remark had triggered Dale's kidnapping attempt. After Dale was arrested, I knew I had to do something to redeem myself. I sought out Shirley, the neighborhood association president, who held all the secrets of this small town. Ms. Shirley confirmed that Dale's family did have a 2 to 3-year-old girl who was kidnapped 12 years ago, and Dale's parents died from the shock. So, Dale really did have a sister. But then, she said something that hit me like a lightning strike. The Walkers moved away right after the kidnapping and only recently returned. Their real daughter died shortly before Annie went missing. They left to cope with the grief. The girl they're raising now, Mandy, she's not their biological child. My entire world spun. Walker's calm insistence that Dale had no sister was a lie. He had lied to me. What else had he lied about? I rushed home, retrieving Dale's old photo of Annie. I zoomed in on it on my computer, staring at the girl's face. I noticed she had 3 tiny moles, arranged in a triangle on her neck. My heart pounded. I drove straight to Mandy's school. I stood at the gate, waiting. When little Mandy walked out, I watched closely. Exactly those 3 moles, arranged in a triangle. I stood frozen in shock. So Mandy was Annie. The Walker family were the kidnappers. I started piecing everything together. The Walkers' real daughter died 12 years ago. The Walkers kidnapped Annie, renamed her Mandy, and raised her as their own daughter to fill the void of their loss. I found the final answer in the secluded outskirts where the old town cemetery lay. In a hidden corner, I found a small, well-cared-for grave with an old stone angel statue. The grave belonged to Mandy Walker, died 12 years ago. That was undeniable proof of their motive. Why did Walker return? Most likely, after 12 years they thought things had settled down, and they returned so Annie, now Mandy, could live near the fake grave they created. I immediately handed over all the information and evidence to the police. Dale, a damaged young man labeled by the community as a delusional doll fanatic, was arrested for kidnapping. But in reality, he was trying to rescue his true little sister. The kidnapping case from 12 years ago and the Walkers' horrifying cover-up were exposed, all because a brother never gave up on his sister. I'm a police officer in rural South Carolina, where the typical night patrol usually involves dealing with speeders or deer crossing the road. The job is stressful because of the solitude, but I never thought it would threaten my life until that night. It was around 11 p.m., and the temperature had dropped severely. The air was biting cold. I was patrolling on Highway 178. This stretch of road has absolutely no streetlights, and there are no houses for miles. Suddenly, my headlights illuminated something unusual. A string of bright orange traffic cones placed diagonally, blocking the road ahead. Right beside them, an unmarked patrol car was parked with its headlights off. I slowed down and stopped a few yards away. A tall, young man stepped out of the car and walked toward me. He was wearing a uniform similar to a police officer, but not from our county. I turned on my spotlight, opened my car door, and stepped out. He raised his hand in a friendly salute, then introduced himself. "Hi there, I'm Officer Darrell. We're closing the road due to an accident up ahead. You'll need to take a detour." I looked him up and down. His uniform didn't match any unit I knew in the area. He only had a radio clipped to his shoulder and an empty holster. No badge, no name tag, none of the necessary gear for an officer on duty. "Which county do you work for?" I asked, my voice carrying a note of suspicion. "Greenville County," he replied, looking me straight in the eye. I almost snorted in disbelief. That county is nearly 30 miles away. There was absolutely no reason for Greenville police to be here without notifying our dispatch first. Moreover, if it were a serious accident, there would be flashing lights, a tow truck, and more officers. Here, there was only silence and a suspicious car. "Oh, Greenville," I said, intentionally drawing out the word. "Then you must be needing a tie clip. Your uniform is a mess, officer." Daryl showed no reaction of fear or surprise. He just stood there staring at me with a blank expression, as if waiting for something. I decided to bet on my gut feeling. "All right, Officer Daryl," I said, lowering my voice. "Now, put both hands behind your back." I didn't draw my weapon. I wanted to see what he would do. Suddenly, I heard the distinct sound of a branch snapping from behind. I immediately spun around, my hand drawing my pistol in a fraction of a second and pointing straight toward the sound. Another man, just as tall, was standing very close to me. He wore a white ski mask covering his entire face, with only 2 dark eye holes visible. In his hands, he held a long-handled fire axe. "Drop the axe right now," I yelled. He didn't move. He just stood still, slowly tilting his head to one side, as if observing me. I shouted the second time, my voice echoing into the woods. "The rest of you step out. I know you're there." Immediately, out of the dense darkness of the pine forest, one person after another stepped out. About 10 people, all wearing various masks, animal masks, clown masks, ski masks. They didn't say a word. They just stood still, forming an arc that surrounded me and my patrol car. They were all holding objects that could be used as weapons. Hammers, shovels, bats. I turned back to look at the fake cop, Daryl. He smiled for the first time, a cold, empty smile. "I think you should leave," he said with a soft, smug tone. I didn't need to be told twice. I instantly jumped into my car, reversed, and turned the vehicle around as fast as I could. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw the entire group still standing in the road, watching me. No one gave chase. They just stood there, like statues in the darkness. I immediately called dispatch. "I need immediate backup. I was just ambushed by a group of people on Highway 178. At least 10 subjects. They have an axe and other weapons." Less than 10 minutes later, 6 other patrol cars were dispatched. But when we returned, everything was gone. All that remained were my tire tracks and the scattered footprints of the group, leading deep into the woods. We organized a manhunt with K9 units. The trail disappeared after about a mile into the woods. They were well prepared, likely following a dry creek bed or a rocky area to erase their tracks. As for the car, it was found abandoned in a parking lot 15 miles away the next morning. It had been stolen from a neighboring town weeks earlier. The official investigation was closed after about a week due to a lack of further leads. But I believe this was an organized ambush, a trap designed to lure unsuspecting victims. And I believe they let me go for one simple reason. I was an armed police officer. Capturing me would have caused too much trouble and noise. Their targets were easier victims, people who wouldn't fight back. Then a few weeks later, a patrol officer spotted a man wandering at the edge of the woods, wearing a thick military jacket. He had no ID, looked exhausted, and repeatedly kept saying, "I don't know anything." Upon searching him, police found a torn piece of a forest map in his pocket and a bloody white mask. Under pressure, he confessed to having been a part of the group, but was abandoned after making a mistake. He said they had been planning for months, faking a police presence, blocking the road for people driving alone at night, then dragging them into the woods. He didn't clearly state what they did with the victims, but the way he trembled when mentioning it said it all. We used him to find the location where the group had been operating. We went deep into the woods, following the map he drew, but when we arrived, everything was gone. All that remained were a few faint footprints and cold, dead ashes. They had cleaned everything up and left. Now, many years have passed, and I know they are still out there somewhere, maybe in a different state, with different victims. I often wonder, how many people disappeared on that Highway 178? And among the masks worn that night, did any of them once belong to the victims? People forced to participate in this deadly trap as a form of punishment or forced participation before meeting their end? I don't have the answers, but I want to warn everyone about this. Not everyone in a uniform represents the law. Not every road sign leads to help. Be vigilant, because sometimes what looks like an accident or a flat tire is just part of a meticulously set trap. And by the time you realize it, it might be too late to reverse. I haven't been able to sleep for almost a month now. I can still feel the cold blade against my neck and his crazy eyes. I'm Stella, 26 years old. I'm a nurse living in New York. It was a Sunday evening in late August. I had just finished my shift at the hospital and was driving back to my small apartment in Queens. The next day was my day off, so I planned to have a relaxing evening with a few movies. There was a Dollar Tree on my way home, so I decided to stop by for some snacks. The store was deserted. I didn't see a single soul, not even a cashier. I thought they must be busy, so I walked along the aisles, quickly grabbing a few items, then headed to the checkout. But the cashier still hadn't appeared. I decided to wait a little longer. Just then, footsteps echoed from the back of the store. A man walked out. He was carrying a fairly large black plastic bag and wasn't wearing a uniform. When he saw me, he was clearly startled, his face suddenly tense. "Excuse me, do you work here? I need to pay for some things," I asked. He looked at me searchingly. I just work in the back in the stock room." I noticed his fingers gripping the plastic bag tightly, his knuckles white. "How long have you been here?" he asked in return. That question confused me. "Just a few minutes," I replied briefly. "Where's the cashier?" He hesitated for a second, then pointed to the back of the store. "He's in the back. I can take you there." This offer immediately put me on high alert. "No thanks." I stepped back. "I'll come back another time." His demeanor changed instantly. His face went from confused to annoyed, then angry. His small eyes stared at me with intense hostility. He mumbled something, but I couldn't hear it clearly. I turned and walked quickly towards the door. Just then, I heard the plastic bag hit the floor and the clinking of metal. I turned back and froze. He was holding a knife in his hand, a long blade stained with dark brown marks. "You're not going anywhere," he said, taking slow steps toward me. My heart pounded as if it would burst from my chest. My body was momentarily paralyzed before my survival instinct kicked in. I turned and ran towards the exit, but I wasn't fast enough. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, a strong force pulled me backward. He wrapped his arms tightly around me from behind, his left arm squeezing me, pinning my arms down, while his right hand brought the knife to my neck. "Shut up," he whispered in my ear. The cold blade pressed against my skin. "Why?" I gasped, trying not to move to prevent the blade from cutting deeper. "Because you're a witness." He squeezed me tighter. I felt the blade about to cut through my skin. At that moment, I truly accepted the worst possible outcome. Just then, gunshots echoed in the store. The explosions made my ears ring. I felt the man jerk violently. He slowly loosened his grip on me, lost his balance, and slowly fell to the floor. The knife clattered beside him. I stood there, trembling uncontrollably, unable to believe what had just happened. Two police officers were standing at the entrance, one of their guns still pointed at the man on the floor. "Are you hurt?" A police officer ran over and asked me. I shook my head, but I couldn't speak a word. Paramedics rushed in, helped me sit down, and checked me. But before I could fully recover, I witnessed another haunting sight. Two paramedics and a police officer were carefully bringing a body out from behind the checkout counter. The Dollar Tree blue shirt was stained red with blood, and the body had countless deep, jagged knife wounds. I immediately vomited on the spot. My body trembled so much that a nurse had to hold my shoulder tightly. I don't remember when I passed out. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room, the soft white hospital lights glaring in my eyes. A young nurse was adjusting an IV drip beside me. I heard the steady beep-beep of the heart monitor. Only then was I sure that I was still alive. The doctor said I was in severe shock and had acute stress disorder after the traumatic event. They kept me for a few days to ensure I was stable. My mom immediately flew in from another state to be with me. She didn't ask many questions. She just held my hand tightly, and I kept crying, unable to say a word. During my hospital stay, I followed the case on the news and online. An article titled, "New York Police Shoot and Kill Murder Suspect at Queens Dollar Tree Store," reported that the man was Carlos, 41 years old. He was wanted in Ohio for armed violence and had escaped from a detention center a few weeks earlier. On the night of the incident, he broke into the store through the back door and murdered the cashier to steal money. The stockroom employee luckily wasn't discovered by him. He quietly left his hiding spot and called the police. When the police arrived, I was moments away from death. They were forced to open fire. If they had been a few seconds slower, I might have been the next victim. The following weeks became a real nightmare. I couldn't sleep. I kept waking up with nightmares of the cold blade against my neck and his crazy eyes. I've been seeing a therapist and trying every day to overcome this trauma. I cherish and am grateful for life because, fortunately, I'm still alive. I'm Lauren Parker, 29, and I just landed a job at Heaven Spa, right down the street here in Denver. I used to be a therapist at a fitness center, but got let go when they started downsizing. Been bouncing between temp jobs for the last 3 months, so when I got the interview at Heaven Spa, I was beyond excited. The place is tucked away in this quiet, windowless building with a smooth stone exterior. The moment I stepped inside, a sudden chill ran through me, and I shivered. The front desk was dead silent, no soft music, no friendly hellos. The receptionist led me down this long hallway, where soft yellow lights flickered against ivory walls covered in weird spiral designs, looked like tangled up snakes. At the end of the hall, Marion Hale, the manager, was waiting for me. She was a tall, thin, middle-aged woman with long black hair and an hourglass figure. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "So, you're Lauren? Welcome." After a quick interview, mostly just personal questions and small talk, Marion took me to another room. There were 4 other new hires already sitting there. A middle-aged guy with sunken eyes, a young girl, a woman, and a skinny dude. Nobody said a word, like they were already used to this weird vibe. Marion told us to hand over all our stuff, phones, watches, wallets. She just stood there, staring us down, waiting for us to go along with it. No one argued, no explanation, just cold silence. Then the lights dimmed, and a screen lit up with this pale blue glow. "Your body isn't yours," a ghostly voice echoed. "You're a gift of healing." When the lights came back on, the room was dead quiet. The young woman suddenly broke down crying, jumped up, and bolted out of there, with the skinny guy right behind her. Marion didn't stop them. She just smiled, like she knew it was going to happen. "Those who stick it out will get what they deserve," she said. I hesitated, ready to get up and leave, but Marion's words froze me in place. I needed the money. And just like that, I started working at Heaven Spa. My job was simple, treating clients using Heaven Spa's so-called special methods. Every client came in through a separate entrance. I never saw their faces, and it felt like they were ghosts, like they weren't even real people. We did treatments with weird names like purification, integration, rebirth. No one ever really explained what any of it meant. After every session, my body felt heavy, drained in a way I couldn't explain. My memory started slipping too, pieces just gone, without a trace. Marion always told me I was doing great. Marion hooked me up with perks too, a private room, free meals, and some pretty sweet bonuses. At the end of each workday, we'd all meet in this dark room to go over how we did. The place was dim, and there were whispers all around us. I did whatever Marion told me, no questions asked, but I couldn't really remember what I did with the clients. When I left the room, all I could think about were the customers and the fat bonuses that kept me stuck in this job. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember anything else. One day, I noticed a bruise on my wrist in the shape of a spiral, just like the symbols on the walls. I looked in the mirror. It was still me, but my eyes looked cloudy, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I knew something seriously sketchy was going on, but I couldn't stop myself from going along with it. Those end-of-day meetings kept getting weirder and weirder. We stood in a small circle, surrounded by a bigger circle of doctors, nurses, and people who'd been working here forever. They told us to close our eyes and listen to the sounds coming from every direction while the people in the outer circle started mumbling. The sounds were a mess, nothing clear, just noise that drilled into my brain and ears. Over time, we all learned to mumble along, like it was second nature. One night, I cracked my eyes open during the ceremony and noticed the guy next to me was gone. No one said a word about him the next day. Then more of them started disappearing, one by one, like they never existed. I started questioning everything I was doing. My body felt weaker every day. My sleep was all over the place, and sometimes I'd wake up with small cuts on my skin. No clue how they got there. Why wasn't anyone talking about them? Were they really gone, or was I just losing my mind? If I stayed, was I going to be the next one to vanish? One night, after finishing work, I made up some excuse to skip the meeting. I wandered down the hallway, lost in thought, trying to decide if I should stick it out or just walk away from this job for good. Before I knew it, I was standing in front of a room I didn't recognize. A chill shot down my spine, making my heart race, but my curiosity wouldn't let me walk away. After making sure no one was behind me, I crept over and gently pushed the door open. A dark, stuffy room hit me with a strong, musty smell. On the floor, there were piles of white uniforms mixed with watches, rings, phones, and wallets, all covered in dust. My hands were shaking as I walked to the far wall, where portraits of former employees were plastered up but their eyes had been scratched out, leaving creepy, empty spaces. At the very end, I saw my own portrait. It was still untouched. Was this what was going to happen to me too? Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my shoulder and straight to my head. My body shut down, and I collapsed to the floor, fading into darkness. When I woke up, my body felt heavy, and I realized I was lying on a treatment bed, surrounded by figures dressed in white. They were chanting, their voices hissing through the air like snakes. A cold hand touched my forehead, sending chills through my whole body. I tried to move, but I was completely paralyzed. Marion's whisper filled my ear. "You're about to become one of us." And that's when it hit me. People like me aren't healers. We're the fuel. My life force was being drained bit by bit, breath by breath. The room spun around me, my vision blurred. I can't die here. Now I've got a new role at the spa, greeting new candidates for interviews. You're Zavia. Welcome. To this day, the police still haven't found them. There are no clues or traces whatsoever. Only what Erica and I witnessed on that terrifying camping night. I haven't had a full night's sleep since then. Every night, I wake up, listening to every sound outside the window. So does Erica. She told me I should write it down. Maybe that would make it less haunting, or at least someone would know the truth if something happened to us. My name is Richard, 36 years old. 2 weeks ago, Erica and I went camping in San Juan National Forest, Colorado. She planned it 2 months in advance, saying we needed some private time after months of stress. It took us about 4 hours to drive to the campsite. The place was wild, rarely visited, with only endless mountain ranges and pine forests. Erica loved this quiet. She brought her camera and was full of energy. We planned to stay there for 5 nights. The first 2 days went smoothly. We set up our tent near a small stream, cooked and chatted by the campfire. Erica took pictures of the scenery, and I went fishing. In the evening, we lay stargazing and listened to the insects. Everything was as peaceful as Erica had wished. On the 3rd night, I woke up to a strange sound. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I felt something moving around the tent. Erica was still sound asleep. I tried not to wake her, slowly and gently sitting up. The growling continued, clearer this time. I was imagining it was a bear looking for food. I crawled to the tent flap, gently unzipping it a little to peek outside. At first, I saw nothing, still just the night forest scene. Then I saw it. It was hunched over, hands touching the ground, growling. It was getting closer. After observing for a few more seconds, I was startled to realize it was a man. My heart started pounding. I moved my eye closer to the gap, trying to see clearly. The man had long hair and a long beard. His clothes were tattered. He continued to crawl around the campsite, sometimes stopping to lift his head and sniff the air. Suddenly, Erica stirred, calling my name in a sleepy voice. I turned back, signaling her to be quiet. Erica's eyes widened. I pointed towards the tent flap and whispered, "There's someone outside." Erica looked through the gap. When she saw the wild man, she covered her mouth to keep from screaming. We stayed absolutely silent, hoping he would leave. But then other footsteps echoed. Erica and I stared at each other with panicked expressions. 2 more men appeared from the darkness. They carried long pieces of wood, looking like homemade baseball bats. They looked as wild as the first man. One of them pointed towards our tent, saying something. We couldn't hear clearly what they were saying, but the tone sounded very aggressive. Erica squeezed my hand, trembling all over. I felt cold sweat trickling down my back. The 3 men were advancing towards our tent, holding the wooden sticks. I immediately thought of the hunting rifle I had owned for a few months, but I left it at home because Erica always hated guns. If I had brought it, we wouldn't have to be shaking like this now. The first man suddenly stopped, lifting his head as if smelling something. He turned towards the tent, looking straight at where we were hiding. Even in the dark, I felt his eyes piercing through the tent fabric. He let out a growl, then lunged towards us. "Run!" I shouted. I grabbed Erica's hand, ripped open the back of the tent, and bolted out. Screams and the sound of sticks hitting the tent echoed behind us. We ran in the dark, relying only on the faint moonlight to find our way to the truck parked 20 meters away. We opened the car doors. Erica slumped into the passenger seat, panting, then kept turning her head to look back. The 3 men had caught up. Impacts on the car echoed. They yelled, even roared as if they were insane. Erica burst into tears, covering her ears tightly. I floored the gas pedal, and the car sped forward. In the rearview mirror, I saw the 3 figures still chasing, screaming, throwing sticks, and kicking. It took quite a while before they gave up. We drove for about an hour before we got cell signal. Erica called the police with a trembling voice, recounting the entire incident. They said they would check the area the next morning. We drove straight home, not daring to stop anywhere. When we arrived, I locked the doors and closed all the window blinds. Neither of us could sleep that night. 2 days later, a police officer called to report that they had found our damaged belongings, but still hadn't found the 3 men with the characteristics we described. Erica and I believe that those 3 men might be hermits who have been living in the forest for a long time. Worse, they might have harmed other tourists without anyone knowing. We decided we would never camp in deserted places again, always choosing managed and more crowded campsites. I'm a single woman, 30 years old, working at a small company in Houston. My life's pretty uneventful, just kinda quiet. I'm not really a loud or social person, and most evenings after work are just me having dinner alone and watching a favorite movie or reading a book. I left work at 8, like always. It was colder than I expected, the March wind sneaking through my thick coat, bringing that damp smell of dry leaves scattered on the sidewalk. I pulled up my collar and hurried to the bus stop, digging around my pocket for my keys. My fingers brushed against something soft and thin, a small piece of paper folded in half. I opened it up, and there was just one number inside, 30. I frowned. Who would even do this? But honestly, I was too tired to care. Standing next to a public trash can, I dropped the paper in and headed home. The next morning, as I got off the bus and walked toward the office, I absent-mindedly stuck my hand in my pocket, a familiar feeling. I pulled out another piece of paper, 29. My heart skipped a beat. This time I stopped, just staring at the number. It felt kinda weird, but I brushed it off. Must be someone messing with me. That's what I told myself, but I couldn't shake this strange feeling growing inside me. In the days that followed, numbers like 28, 27, 26 kept showing up in my pocket, one after another. I started feeling uneasy. How the hell were these pieces of paper showing up like this? I started checking my pockets every day, turning them inside out before leaving the house. But nothing changed. I changed the locks, installed a security camera, even bought a gun for protection and kept it under my pillow. But that didn't change a thing. I kept finding the notes, each one closer, more unsettling every day. I was getting more and more anxious, trying to figure it out, but coming up empty. Every time I went out, I kept looking around, eyeing every passerby like they might be the one messing with me. Was someone doing this to me on purpose? One weekend morning, I didn't go to work, and the note wasn't in my pocket this time. I found it in my mailbox. Number 3, someone knew where I lived. I looked around, panicked, feeling helpless, and like I couldn't breathe. When I got inside, my mind wouldn't stop racing with 1,000 questions. What the hell was going on? I had to call the police, but what could I even tell them? What proof did I have? I ran into the bathroom, gripping the door to steady myself, because it felt like my body was about to give out. My mind was a mess, and the only thing looping over and over in my head was numbers. I didn't want to see them anymore. Not again. I turned on the faucet, letting the cold water run over my face, hoping it would calm me down. My hands shook as the cold water hit them, but it didn't clear my head. The fear still clung to me like a ghost, hanging in the air, drowning out every other feeling. I stood up and looked in the mirror in front of me, and there it was, the number 2. My eyes widened, and this crushing feeling of despair hit me. No way out. No escape. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick, like it was closing in on me. I couldn't take it anymore. I held my head, my hands tangled in my messy hair, like I just wanted to tear myself away from all of this. And I screamed, a desperate, helpless cry for help. Someone was out there, watching from a distance, and I was just a piece in their messed up game. I called Maggie out of breath, begging to crash at her place for a few days. I told her everything. She thought I was just burned out from work. Maggie promised she'd always have my back and would call the police if anything happened. But even with Maggie's reassuring smile, I couldn't shake the anxiety. The days I spent at Maggie's apartment felt like a much-needed break. Every morning when I woke up, those pieces of paper, those creepy numbers, were gone. Maggie was always there, talking with me, having coffee together, and in those moments, I slowly started to feel a little more at peace. After a few days, I knew I had to go home. I needed to grab some important documents, and I couldn't keep relying on Maggie forever. But part of me still felt uneasy, so I asked Maggie to come with me. When we got near my door, there was a piece of paper stuck to it. This time, it was the number 1 right in the middle of a target symbol. I froze, my heart pounding, fear flooding over me. All those awful memories came rushing back. Maggie, I whispered, my voice shaky, squeezing her hand without even realizing it. Maggie looked at the paper and smiled. Don't stress too much. Everything's fine. We'll just grab your documents and get out of here. I tried to grab her hand, but she just looked at me, sighed, and opened the door. The moment the door opened, it felt like time stopped. Then a loud noise. My whole body tensed up. Numbness and confusion swallowed me. Everything felt blurry, unreal. I saw Maggie collapse to the floor, bright red blood quickly soaking into the carpet beneath her. A bullet right in the middle of her forehead, her eyes still wide open. Frozen in shock, I couldn't move, couldn't say a word. The only sound in the room was my shaky, ragged breathing that wouldn't stop. I called the police, telling them everything, from the weird numbers on the pieces of paper to Maggie's death. They brought me in to give a statement at the station. When I walked into the interrogation room, the bright lights made it hard to see anyone's face. Everything felt hazy, unfamiliar. I sat down, clutching my head, my eyes red and swollen from crying. My words came out in broken pieces, and sometimes I even laughed this strange, unsettling laugh, like the panic had completely taken over. The police kept asking me about the weird stuff, the numbers, Maggie, but all I could do was repeat myself, crying and laughing, totally lost. It felt like I was stuck in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Finally, I stared straight at the detective taking notes and said, my voice sharp but oddly unfamiliar, I have found a substitute. A faint, unsettling smile crept across my face, even though I didn't understand why. The whole room went silent, everything suddenly still. Just me, and those damn pieces of paper that wouldn't leave me alone. My name is Tom. I'm a truck driver working for a logistics company in Florida. I had just started this job, not my first in the industry. I used to work in a different state. That day was a Wednesday. I was delivering a shipment of electronics to Atlanta. The radio was playing country music, and I was sipping coffee from a rest stop I'd passed earlier. I was about 20 miles from the delivery address when my phone buzzed. There was a message. Urgent change of delivery address. New location, 1847 Riverside. Customer requested. Shipping depth. I slowed the truck down, a little confused by the sudden change, but I followed the new instructions. Maybe the system was just updating late. I was still new and didn't want to raise a fuss over something small. So I turned the wheel and followed the GPS toward the new drop-off point. The road led into an old industrial area, low buildings in rows, many shut down. Some signs were broken, others completely missing. The sun was setting fast, and shadows were swallowing the streets. The address brought me to a large warehouse. No lights were on. I parked the truck out front and stepped out. 2 men walked out from the shadows beside the building. One was tall and skinny, wearing a wrinkled blue shirt. The other was shorter, heavier, with a baseball cap pulled low. Neither of them wore any kind of company uniform. "Are you the driver, Tom?" the tall one asked. "Yeah," I replied. "Who are you with?" "Southern Logistics," the guy in the cap said. "We're here to receive the shipment." I had never heard of Southern Logistics. Usually, the client sends a manager with paperwork to sign and inspect the goods. The place looked half abandoned. It didn't feel right. "I'll need to see an authorization form," I said. The tall man reached into his pocket, glancing sideways at his partner. After a few seconds of silence from them, I decided to handle things myself first. "Let me just make a quick call to confirm," I said, and turned back toward my cab. I climbed in, locked the door, and called my main dispatcher. "Why are you in Riverside?" Her voice was utterly surprised. "I got a text message changing the delivery address," I replied. "What text message?" "I didn't send anything, and we don't have any customers in Riverside for this trip." My heart pounded. I quickly pulled up my phone to look at the text again. It was from an unknown number. I'd been duped. I hung up and looked outside. The two men were standing right next to my truck. The big guy had already opened the back of the trailer. I started the engine and laid on the horn. "Get out of the way," I yelled through the window. They didn't move. I started backing up, not caring if they moved or not. When they saw I wasn't slowing down, they jumped out of the way. I sped out of the industrial park, my heart hammering in my chest. In my rearview mirror, I saw a black car turn on its headlights and speed after me. The intense chase lasted about 30 minutes. I was trying to focus on driving while fumbling for my phone to call the police. I'm a truck driver, and someone's chasing me on I-95 near Savannah. They just tried to trick me into delivering to a fake address. "Can you make it to the nearest gas station?" the dispatcher asked. "I'll try." I took the next exit and drove straight to the closest gas station. The black car slowed down, then turned around and headed the other way. I sat in my truck, shaking and breathing hard. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled in. A serious-looking officer got out and introduced himself as Officer Adam. I showed him the fake text message on my phone. Adam frowned as he looked at the number. "Tom, do you know anything unusual about the cargo you're carrying?" "Just electronics. Same as always." The officer stepped away to make a call. 5 minutes later, he came back, his face grim. "We just checked. The cargo you're hauling isn't typical electronics. It's contraband that the FBI has been tracking." I gasped. "No way. I'm just a driver. Your boss, Marcus, is the head of the operation. The guys in Atlanta are his clients." I was stunned, my whole body trembling. I started remembering all those urgent jobs with unusually high pay that Marcus always personally picked drivers for. I was a new employee, always followed instructions, and never questioned anything. That's probably why he chose me. But why did they send a text changing the delivery location? I asked. Officer Adam gave a slight smirk. Because the FBI was staked out at the original drop-off point. Marcus was arrested 2 hours ago. The guys in Atlanta panicked and tried to divert the deal. I didn't know what else to say. I felt both terrified and incredibly lucky. An hour later, a convoy of FBI vehicles arrived to take the cargo. I handed the keys to one of the agents. I wasn't charged with anything since I cooperated and wasn't involved. Your refusal to deliver and calling the police helped us catch the whole gang. We've been tracking them for months. Officer Adam patted me on the shoulder. The next morning, the news reported that Marcus and 7 accomplices had all been arrested. I was truly grateful, realizing how close I'd come to real danger. I'm starting with a different trucking company next week. This time, I've thoroughly checked their company history, their management, and every single shipping contract. I never want to step into a cab again without knowing exactly what I'm hauling and who might be watching me. Some decisions in life, when I look back on them, still make me shiver. The decision to refuse a ride to a strange woman that night probably saved my life. I'm Katie, 26 years old, living alone in Albany, New York. It was an evening after my shift, and I stopped at Dollar Tree to buy a few essentials. Just as I stepped out of my car, a voice behind me startled me. "Excuse me, could you give me a ride?" I turned around and saw a woman, about 30 years old, with disheveled hair and a baggy shirt. She stared at me, her hands clasped in front of her chest. I froze for a few seconds, recalling her very strained voice and seeing her fingers slightly trembling. "Sorry, I can't," I replied briefly, turning and walking away immediately, but I couldn't help feeling a little uneasy as I entered the store. I went inside Dollar Tree and started picking out what I needed. As I was standing by the food aisle, I felt someone approach. Turning around, I saw the same woman from earlier. She had followed me inside. This made me feel uncomfortable. "I really need a ride." This time her voice was more urgent, almost pleading. When I looked directly at her face, the unease in my stomach began to turn into genuine worry. Her eyes were unusually wide. Her face, though seemingly normal, had clenched jaw muscles, as if she was trying to suppress something. She kept darting her eyes back and forth, not focusing on any single point. My gut told me something was very wrong with this person. "I'm sorry, but I can't help you," I said, then moved to another aisle, hoping she would understand and leave me alone. She didn't follow me anymore. I breathed a sigh of relief, trying to shop quickly, pay, and leave the store as soon as possible. I opened my car trunk to put my shopping bags away when I heard footsteps behind me. I froze, and my heart started pounding faster. "Please." I turned around. She was very close now. Her face was completely different from the previous 2 times. Her eyes were wide and glaring as if they wanted to burn through me, and blue veins prominently bulged on her forehead and neck. Her hands trembled violently and clenched into fists, her knuckles white. Her breathing was rapid and irregular. At this point, I was absolutely sure she was not normal. The confusion in my mind now became real fear. I needed to get out of there immediately. I said, "I can't. If you need help, I can call the police for you." I tried to keep my voice calm. Her reaction shocked me. Her face suddenly contorted, and her mouth opened wide as she shrieked a string of obscenities. Then she started punching her own head, her fingernails clawing at her cheeks, leaving red marks. "You don't understand. I need to go home. I need to go home right now." I backed away, my heart thumping. Even though I felt guilty for not helping someone in distress, my instinct told me this was not the time to be kind. I quickly opened my car door and jumped inside, my hands trembling as I fumbled the key into the ignition. A thud startled me. She was trying to open the back door, yanking hard on the handle. "Open the door! Open the door now!" I hit the lock button. Through the rearview mirror, I saw her pick up a large rock from a nearby flower bed. The sound of the rock hitting the car's body was very loud. I didn't dare look back. I just quickly started the car and drove away. Once I was on the main road, I finally dared to look back in the mirror. She was still standing in the middle of the parking lot, rock still in hand, watching my car disappear into the night. As soon as I got home, I called the police to report what had just happened. They took down my statement and sent someone to Dollar Tree to investigate. 2 days later, the police called me back to update me on the investigation. The woman, named Lisa, had been arrested at another grocery store in the area on charges of property damage and assault. She was a severe addict with no fixed address. The police said she had a history of violence when denied help. "You did the right thing by not giving her a ride. In that state, she could have done anything," the officer said. Hearing these words, I truly realized how close I had come to danger. If I had decided to be kind and given her a ride, what could have happened then? She could have attacked me, stolen my car, or even worse. I will never forget the lesson of trusting my gut. Sometimes refusing to help isn't cruel, it's self-preservation.
I'm Thomas, 18 years old, and a first-year student at the University of South Florida. Everything is new to me, from the vast campus to the new friends I've made. The university has arranged for me and other first-year students to stay in the dorms. My dorm isn't the most modern or luxurious place, but it's enough for me to live comfortably and study. I share a room with a third-year student named Anthony. From the first time I met him, I could sense that Anthony was different. He's very quiet, almost to the point of being so silent that it feels like he doesn't exist. Anthony never speaks up on his own, and I didn't dare ask too many questions because I didn't want to bother him. Occasionally, I could only hear soft sounds coming from his side. I almost never saw him leave the room during the day, except when it got dark. Anthony never turned on the lights in the room. There was only a faint light from the window, whether it was day or night. When I first met him, I could say that Anthony was very handsome, but there was something oddly unusual about him. Anthony's skin was so pale, it was hard to believe. It wasn't the healthy, fair type, but rather a sickly, pale skin that was almost translucent. This could be due to him not being exposed to sunlight for a long time. His pale skin only made Anthony's full red lips stand out even more. But what truly sent a shiver down my spine whenever I looked at Anthony was his canine teeth. When facing Anthony, I couldn't help but notice the long, sharp, canine tooth that peeked out from behind his red lips. It made me feel like I was facing a creature that wasn't human. The way Anthony moved only made that eerie feeling more pronounced. He didn't walk naturally. Every step was very gentle, making no sound at all. Anthony's strangeness made me feel scared and panicked on more than one occasion. One evening, I was reading at my desk. Suddenly, I heard a noise, a few soft thuds echoing. It was hard to pinpoint where the sound was coming from, as light was a luxury in my dorm room. When I turned my head, my gaze accidentally caught sight of Anthony. With the appearance I had described, Anthony startled me, making my whole body jump. But what I saw in Anthony's hand the next second was even more shocking, to the point that my whole body went numb and froze. A glass cup. Inside is a dark red liquid. That deep, dark red color made me shiver involuntarily. Anthony didn't even pay any attention to me. He drank the liquid slowly, sip by sip, as if he were enjoying a special drink just for him. When the liquid in the cup was almost gone, Anthony gently closed his eyes, feeling the taste, a look of satisfaction evident on his face. I could only watch every movement. My heart beat faster. The feeling of insecurity increased more and more. The fear inside me seemed to rise in waves from within my chest and then spread throughout my body. Can't explain the uncomfortable and creepy feeling when I saw him drinking it. I didn't dare ask, didn't dare look for too long. Quickly turned away, trying not to let the confusion in my heart take over. But I couldn't concentrate on the book anymore. Is he a vampire? Since that night, I can't get this thought out of my head. Every time I look at Anthony, I see his skin getting whiter and his eyes deeper. I started avoiding Anthony and didn't dare tell anyone what I thought. Part of me wanted to believe that I was just imagining it all, but the other part of me admitted that strange thoughts were slowly taking over my mind. I started trying to stay in the library longer to avoid having to go back to my room, but the obsession with Anthony still wouldn't leave. I felt more stressed and tired, couldn't concentrate on studying, couldn't sleep well, and couldn't do anything but worry. I tossed and turned all night, listening to every sound from outside the room, afraid that Anthony would suddenly appear and I wouldn't be able to escape. Every time I see him, I feel like there is a predator stalking me in the dark, waiting for the opportunity to attack. The more scared I became, the more I paid attention to Anthony. I observed his every gesture and action closely. From fear, I gradually got used to fear and turned it into curiosity. One morning, I saw Anthony wake up early. He happily hummed a song, went to the bathroom to take a shower, and came back with a completely different appearance. Anthony is handsome, with vibrant white skin, neatly combed hair, and fangs have also disappeared. Anthony put on a white shirt and neatly ironed trousers, ate a sandwich and drank another glass of dark red water, then left the room with the file in hand. I was stunned for a moment, stuck in thoughts of whether the person just now was Anthony or not. Getting out of bed, I walked over to Anthony's glass of water, picked it up, and slowly brought it up to my nose to smell it. "Pomegranate juice," I exclaimed in surprise, sinking deeper into the feeling of confusion. not being able to do anything decent that whole day. That afternoon, when I returned to my room after class, as soon as Anthony saw me, he happily greeted me. Anthony was extremely excited, boasting about the fact that his graduation thesis, researching the psychological phenomenon of vampires, was highly appreciated. I feel lucky that I am smart enough to reason and understand everything for myself. A feeling of surprise and shock rose within me. All of my doubts about Anthony turned out to be just illusions that I created in my mind. Nothing more and nothing less. Luckily, I didn't do anything to embarrass and regret it.
My girlfriend Natalie and I had been dating for almost a year. She loved to explore new places, and I needed to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the city. We decided to rent a cabin on Airbnb for a short trip over Labor Day weekend. According to the website, the cabin was in Durham, North Carolina, nestled among tall oak trees, with a spacious front porch and large windows that let in a lot of natural light. The price was reasonable, and the owner seemed easygoing. The drive from our place to Durham took almost 3 hours. The GPS led us onto a small dirt road. The cabin appeared after a curve, but in person, it looked deserted and lacked the cozy feel from the photos. The air was colder than I thought it would be. There was no lock on the door. The doorknob turned easily, but the door seemed stuck. I had to push hard to open it, and it made an unpleasant creaking sound. Inside, the cabin was fully furnished, with a stone fireplace and large windows that let in sunlight. But there were details that made us frown. In the sink, there were 3 dishes with dried food residue. The refrigerator had some leftover food. Near the TV, there was a blurry photo frame of a man. We didn't feel completely comfortable, but we had traveled a long way and the cabin was generally okay. Maybe the previous guests had just left, and the owner hadn't had time to clean up. We decided to ignore it and continue to enjoy our trip. We started cleaning up and unpacking our bags. In the evening, we cooked dinner together and watched a movie, with Natalie curled up next to me on the sofa. Around 10 p.m., we heard a noise outside. At first, we didn't pay attention, but then the sound became clearer. It was a car engine. I went to the window and gently pulled the curtain back a little to look outside. It was an SUV, parked right in the driveway. A tall man moved with an alarming confidence. Natalie turned off the TV at my request, and the room was plunged into darkness. We stood still, watching the strange man. Instead of going straight to the front door, he went around to the back of the house. I saw him pull something out of the trunk of his car, a large gray bag that looked very heavy. The shape of the bag gave me goosebumps. He went deep into the backyard, disappearing from view. His confident and decisive actions truly unsettled us. A few minutes later, the sound of a shovel rang out steadily. We moved to the window overlooking the backyard and saw him digging a hole with the bag from earlier placed next to it. Our suspicions were now confirmed. Natalie was in a total panic. She whispered to me about calling the police and accidentally kicked the leg of a table, making a pretty loud noise in the quiet night. Both of us froze in place. Natalie looked at me with her eyes wide and round with fear. The next second, footsteps sounded, and a flashlight beam shone into the living room window. We stood there, frozen, unable to think or react. I could hear Natalie's quick breaths in my ear. The footsteps stopped, the flashlight shone directly at the window, and swept around. How can an intruder be so brazen? The footsteps continued, and then stopped at the front door. I heard a metallic sound. Maybe he was checking the lock. The doorknob turned slowly. A small click sounded, and the door was kicked open. The man walked in with a menacing look. In his hand was a handgun. To make things worse, he even knew where the light switch was. I could see his face clearly. Feeling a sense of familiarity, I looked at the photo hanging on the wall. "Who are you?" he yelled, pointing the gun straight at us. I raised my hands, and Natalie fearfully hid behind me. "We rented this house," I said. "I'm the owner of this house." No one is allowed to be here." His voice had a hint of surprise. The gun was still pointed at us. I opened the booking app and showed it to him. He looked at the screen. His eyebrows furrowed, and his mouth opened a little. "This can't be," he mumbled, his eyes still glued to the phone screen. The gun was lowered a little, and that was our chance. I signaled to Natalie with a quick nod. We grabbed hands and ran straight for the back door. "Stop!" he yelled and chased after us. The back of the house was shrouded in darkness with only the faint moonlight. We ran straight into the woods, not daring to look back. I could hear him running behind us. We kept running deeper into the woods. The sound of his footsteps began to fade. Maybe he decided not to chase us anymore, or he got lost in the darkness. When we felt we had run far enough, I took out my phone and called 911. My voice was trembling as I described the situation to the operator. There was an armed man in the house we rented, and we suspected he had just buried something in the yard. The police arrived, and we led them to the cabin. The man was gone, along with his SUV, but the bag was still there, half buried in the newly dug hole in the backyard. Inside was the decomposing body of a man. Natalie almost fainted when she saw the scene. We immediately packed our bags and moved to a hotel. Natalie was in a bad mental state. She couldn't sleep and cried a lot. Early the next morning we left, and I took her straight to the hospital for care. The investigation later revealed a more complicated story than we had imagined. The man in the bag was a real estate agent. The killer was Tom Bradley, the real owner of the house. The agent had threatened to sue Tom over a $600,000 debt. They had a violent argument last week. Bradley had beaten the agent to death with a golf club and then brought the body back to the house to dispose of it. We had rented the house from a sophisticated scammer, and he had vanished without a trace. The police couldn't find any information about his real identity. Bradley was arrested at a friend's house 3 days later while trying to wash the bloodstains off his SUV. He was charged with first-degree murder and faced life in prison without parole. Since then, we have never rented a place through online booking sites again.